Hello and welcome to today's video where I'll be showing you how to make the darling Valentina cuffs. Many of you have told me that you just started sewing or got little sewing kits for Christmas, and so I thought now would be a nice time to drop a tutorial. Out of all the Valentine's items to sew, the darling Valentina cuffs are definitely the most simple to recreate, so that's what we'll be doing today. So let's get into the materials you're gonna need. First up, you're going to want some satin ribbon. This can be in any colour you want, and this will make the middle of the cuff and also the bow that goes on top. Next up, you're going to want some lace that's wider than your ribbon, and as you can see, the one that I have here has a very decorative side and then a side that just has like a scalloped edge to it. Next up, you're going to want some snap fasteners. If you don't have snap fasteners, then you could probably use Velcro as well. Then you're going to want some sewing thread in the same colour as your ribbon. Now moving on to tools you'll need, you will of course need some scissors. Then next up you're going to need a sewing needle. You're going to need some pins as well to help keep things in place whilst you're sewing. And lastly, that is a lighter that I use to seal the ends of ribbon, but if you cannot use fire, you can also use glue or nail polish to seal the ends of the ribbon to stop them from fraying. To start the cuffs off, you're going to want to take your ribbon and measure it around your wrist, and make sure to leave enough room there for your snap fasteners or Velcro, because if you do cut this too short, then it's going to either not fit your wrist or it's just going to be extremely tight once you add the fasteners. And once you have that first bit of ribbon cut out, you can then just lay it on top of the ribbon and cut a second one out. This way you won't have to do it later on. Now that you have two pieces of ribbon, you can seal the ends, and if you cannot use fire, you can just use glue or nail polish, but of course you will have to wait for those to dry before proceeding on to the next step. Now, before we move on to the next step, I need to show you how to do a back stitch. Now, if you have no idea how to properly knot your thread, there are multiple ways in which you can do that, but the way I'm showing you here is to just keep sewing in the exact same place, and it will secure your thread. Just sew in the exact same spot about 4 to 5 times, and as you can see, that is pretty strong. Now, to start the back stitch off, you want to pierce the needle in just behind the knot, and then poke the needle through in front of it, and then just bring the needle through. Now from here, you want to go back to where the thread was, and just poke that forward. Now, I'd hope most of you are visual learners, but basically you just go back and forth. So I drew some dots onto the fabric to maybe make it a little bit easier, but you basically go back one dot, and then when you pull in the needle through, you go into the next dot. So remember, your needle can only go forward if the needle is under the fabric. And here's how it looks from the underside. And when you get to the end, you can just again go back and forth with the with making the knot, so you just sew in the exact same place to secure the thread. So that's what I'm doing here on this last stitch. I'm just going back and forth in that one place to secure the thread. Okay, now that we have covered how to do a back stitch and a knot, it's time to get back to the cuffs. Now you're going to need your lace and your pins. So you're going to want to start off by lining your lace and ribbon up like that, and just quickly pin that in place because that's going to make it easier to make the pleats. And once you have that pinned in place, it's time to make the first pleat, which you do by just folding it over like that. And this will be a little bit fiddly at first, but trust me, you will get used to it the more you do it. And you just want to quickly pin that in place. Make sure to get the pleat and the ribbon in it, just to keep it all together whilst you're sewing it, because you don't want it all to fall out whilst you're trying to sew it. Once you have that first pleat all pinned in place, it's time to move on to the second. Now with the second, you have to do this the opposite way, so just fold it in, like, I'm not really sure how to explain it, but you can see it on the screen. But yeah, just have it facing the opposite way, because this will give you them really nice pleats. And you're just going to want to repeat this down the length of the ribbon, and make sure to always have the pleats facing the opposite way to each other. Also, try to pay attention to how much space you leave between each pleat, because if you can get these very similar, then it will give you them really nice looking pleats. Once you've reached the other end of the ribbon, you should end up with something that looks like this. And this is what it looks like when it's on, and as you can see, the pleats make the lace puff out in a way that they wouldn't if you hadn't done the pleats. If you didn't do the pleats, then it would be pretty flat. Also, once you're happy with how the pleats look, you can just snip the rest of the lace off at the end. Now it's actually time to start sewing. And this is the exact same thing as what I showed you earlier on the scrap bit of fabric. The only difference is now, you know, you're actually sewing two bits of things together, and where you want to start off is of course right at the end, and do the knot to secure your thread in place. Once your thread is all secure, that's when you can start going ahead and sewing. It might be a little bit hard starting off, but once you get it, then you'll be able to just zoom through sewing this. Also, once the pleats start getting caught in your stitch, you can take the pin out. Obviously, once the thread is there to secure the fabrics together, then, you know, the pin isn't needed and they get in the way, so as soon as you can take them out, so it'll make like sewing a lot easier. Once you've gotten to the end, remember to knot that thread super tight, because you do not want this coming out. And here's how it should look, and here's how it looks on. Of course, this is only half a cuff, so we've got to work on that other side. Now, what you're going to want to do is try to mimic the pleats on the other side. You know, pay attention to spacing and all that, and just make it look symmetrical. And here's how that should look. Again, once you've pinned it all down, you can just cut off the end of the lace, and just do the exact same thing with sewing it down, so just back stitch it down. Here's how that should look once you have both sides sewn down, and it's time to move on to adding the snap fasteners or Velcro. Now, I actually doubled my thread for this, so basically how you double your thread is you pull the thread all the way to the end like that, so you have both ends there, and then you're just going to want to knot that. And that is how you get double thread. I'm not going to be showing in detail how you add snap fasteners, because I don't know how to explain that at all. But to secure your thread, what you want to do is just put your needle in between the two threads before the knot, and when you pull that, it's going to secure the thread. One thing you don't want to do is end up putting the snap fasteners on the exact same side, so be sure to flip that over before adding the other snap fastener. And here I'm just trying to work out where to put the other side of the snap fastener. So, decided right there. And then you're going to want to sew that down. Now this is why it's so important to have sealed the ends of your ribbon, because obviously ribbon does fray, and if you're doing this much sewing right near the edge, it will fray, and then, you know, you'll risk the Darling Valentina cuffs just slowly coming apart at the edges. So definitely seal your ribbon. We're on to the last step now, which is of course the bow, and you're going to want to prepare your needle and thread before we start to create the bow. So grabbing the ribbon, you're going to want to kind of wrap it around like this to create a bow shape with like 4 loops. Not entirely sure how to explain it, but you don't want to cut it off, so keep it like that, and then get your needle and thread and run that through the middle and quickly secure that at the end, and then just bring it up through the middle of the bow and pull that really tight so it kind of crumples a little bit in the middle, and then grab the ribbon and wrap it around and then secure that in the back. That might be a little bit hard to follow, but I hope you're able to follow that. It also doesn't matter how messy the sewing is in the back. All you want to care about is getting all those layers of ribbon into the stitch, but then just make sure that you're not poking through the front of the ribbon. And then once it's all secure, you can just cut off the excess ribbon and keep the needle attached, because then you can just use that extra thread to attach it to the cuff. All you gotta do is stab the needle through the back of the cuff like that, and then just sew it from the back of the cuff, and you can just sew it messily as long as your needle doesn't stab through the front of the bow, so the stitching's not visible. Just go crazy and make sure that bow's secure. And that is what you should be left with. Of course, you will have to do this a second time with the bit of ribbon that you cut out at the start, but it doesn't take too long to do. I believe you can finish the second cuff. Don't just do one. And that was the tutorial. I really hope that you guys liked this tutorial, and if you do follow it, please show me your Darling Valentina cuffs on social media or in my Discord server. All those links and social media things are in the description of all my videos. I'll be sure to feature your Darling Valentina cuffs in a future video, so I honestly can't wait to see them, and I do hope that you guys did learn some techniques. I know I'm not a great teacher, but I still hope that you learned something, or maybe gained a little bit more confidence or whatever to make something. Like, it honestly makes me so happy to know that my little YouTube channel is inspiring people to start sewing, or like taking interest in sewing. It's like one of those things that's hard to grasp, really. But anyway, that will be all for today's video. Once again, if you do decide to make these, please show me. I would love to see. Don't forget to leave a comment and a like, and maybe share with a friend. If you're new to the channel and you're not yet subscribed, why not subscribe to help us hit 40,000 subscribers? And also, if you do subscribe, then you're less likely to miss out on cool videos by me. Like, don't trust the YouTube algorithms to show you all my best videos. But yeah, thank you so much for watching, and why not check out some of the cards that are probably on the screen right now. I have a whole playlist full of things. But yeah, I'll see you next time probably.